I want to make a couple of notes before I actually start up on the video. Now, if you just want to get straight to the video, just click somewhere on my bow tie. There will be an annotation and it'll take you to where the actual rebuttal to Essence of Thought will begin. Now, before I start, there's a couple things I want to note. Now, I took a video that is about 8 minutes long and I turned it into a 20-some minute video. Essence of Thought then took that 20-some minute video and turned it into what is almost about 50, close to 50 minutes. I don't plan on doing that here. I'm not going to take his 50 minutes and turn it into an hour and a half ordeal. I don't think it is productive. I don't think it'll be a good form of discussion for me to take the whole video and talk about the whole video. So I have excluded a lot of the things that he has said. A lot of it I excluded because I honestly do not necessarily disagree with him. And so I found it to be rather petty for me to argue against it just for argument's sake. So I have decided to not argue against it. The other thing is that I have tried to pick the things that I feel are the most important to this discussion. So with that in mind, I am going to link the whole video, and none of the edits that I make, I am making to take Essence of Thought out of context. The only reason that I'm making a lot of these big edits is to make this video not an hour and a half long discussion. I feel like there are definitely some key points that are worth hitting, and there are points that are not worth the time and effort from me to hit. Essence of Thought, if you think that I am being unfair by not answering or not talking about some of your points, that I apologize, and feel free to call me out for it in the comments. But again, I don't want to spend an hour and a half talking about every point you made, especially when I'm going to sit around and say, well, I kind of agree with you there, but, or I kind of think you're right, but. I don't think those are going to really make good discussions. So for all the parts that I left out, you can pretty much assume that I am conceding those points in order to focus more on the points that I'm trying to make in this video. With that in mind, let's get started on what I actually have to say about Essence of Thought's response to me. And so, while it might work for you as an individual, that doesn't mean that it is necessarily true for the whole group. Because you see this sheep-like mentality among feminists where they do follow everything that Anise Sarkeesian says, they do follow everything that Jessica Valenti says, and they do it unquestionably.
First of all, have you ever seen what actually happens in the atheist and secular community when TJ gets angry at someone? It does not matter if that person brought forward a completely factual basis that completely destroys him. They just don't care. I mean, I feel that, like before, little actual thought was put into this response. I utilise TJ and secularism in my initial video as a specific example for a reason. You could have predicted this, noted it and went, oh wait, my argument doesn't exactly work. If you wish to define dogma in such a watered down way as big figures that, quote, do in fact form the decisions of others, then you have just classed secularism or even being atheist as dogmatic. Otherwise, you would have created a double standard. I mean, forget TJ and think about Hitchens, Dawkins, Harris. Think about the entire purpose of debate. It is ultimately there to inform the decisions of others, not to convince the opposition, that the person on the debate is going against, but to inform the decision of those in the crowd. You would thus rather unintentionally class this as a symptom of dogma.
I don't know if you did this on purpose or not, but you missed a very important word that I said. And the word that I used was unquestionably. And this is a word that you're going to hear me use a lot. And I'm going to make sure to use it with emphasis. just so that you don't miss it the next time I say it. I chose the word unquestionably because it emphasizes the way in which individuals can be informed by people who have either higher standing or more popular than them, and they follow it unquestionably. That is why I chose that specific word, unquestionably. And I would say that if, yes, somebody follows Richard Dawkins, unquestionably, they are being dogmatic. If someone follows Christopher Hitchens, unquestionably, they are being dogmatic. Now, if you do not want me to use the word dogmatic, I don't have to. I will just have to find another word for the phenomena of somebody following someone else's words unquestionably. And that's fine. Maybe the word dogmatic has too many negative connotations for you to like. So we'll skip. I won't use that word anymore. So what I'm talking about here is the fact that you have big feminists who are informing feminist thought, and people are following unquestionably. Now, this is something, again, that I see does happen in the atheist community, does happen in the secular community, does happen in the MRA community. To give you an example, when I was making my first response to you, I wanted to bring up the case that was on the news at one point or another regarding how two men had been arrested for manspreading. And I wanted to talk about this. But I had received this information just from the YouTubes, and I accepted it unquestionably. Before I made my video to you, I bothered to research what this claim actually was, and found that it was unsubstantiated. So I did not use it. But I did, in fact, buy into something unquestionably, obviously until I questioned it. And I would say that that is a bad thing to do. I think you and I can both agree that if we just take the information that is given to us and we accept it unquestionably, if we accept every claim that we get unquestionably, then we are not doing things right. And again, I go back to this idea that you have these big influential people informing the decision of other people, and people are following these feminists unquestionably, and that's a problem. And you can say, this happens in the atheist community, this happens in the secular community, this happens in the Christian community. Yes, it does. And it's a problem there too. I'm not singling out feminism as they are the only ones with this problem. I am pointing out a problem. And the reason that I think it is a little bit more important with feminism than, say, the atheist movement is because, unlike the atheist movement, the feminist movement wields a whole lot more power. I think currently in the US, about 20% of the population consider themselves a feminist. And not just that, they don't just hold power in the numbers that they have, they hold power in what they can influence and the kinds of things that they can make happen. If feminism weren't so strong, do you really think we would have the New York subway pushing for something like stopping manspreading? If feminism wasn't so strong, do you think you'd have people like President Obama repeating this idea of a wage gap? Now, like I said before, this isn't exclusively a problem of feminism. You have people on all social political movements who say stupid things. The difference is that when this happens, say, in the atheist community, When you have someone like Richard Dawkins say something really stupid, other atheists and other members of the community come out against him. When feminists say something stupid, they double down on their statements. Feminists will do things like, "I stand with Jackie," instead of admitting that they might have been wrong, or even abstaining from having an opinion about someone who has been judged in the court of popular opinion. They double down and they come out with this, "I stand with Jackie." When someone gets caught in a lie in the feminist movement, you have things like Sarah Silverman, who instead of apologizing for lying, they double down and say, "Oh, I should have just kept it as an anonymous story." Why? So that you couldn't tell that I was lying. You don't see the same kind of introspectiveness in the feminist movement that you do in the atheist movement. I think something like the A plus phenomenon that happened a few years ago gives you the kind of idea of how the atheist movement is different than the feminist movement. Because when someone came out with a stupid idea, it was the people within the group who were speaking out against it. It didn't take people from outside of the group looking in to tell them that they were doing something stupid.
I mean, by your definition, you have just classed all of education as dogmatic, from the lowest to university level, as even in the university level, no matter how critical you are, your tutors will still inform some of your decisions, some of the ways you answer your questions, etc., as they are big figures that inform your decisions.
Now, I would actually say that yes, education is dogmatic. Education is, in fact, being informed and then accepting that information unquestionably. And that is actually a problem. Now, I say this as somebody who works in education. I say this as somebody who has worked very, very hard to try to change the system so that we are not, in fact, just informing our pupils and they are not just accepting it unquestionably. Now, this has led to some really interesting and great developments, as here in the United States, in the last few years, we have gotten the system called Common Core. Now, Common Core, to not throw in too much education jargon, pretty much changes the system so that we are no longer informing students and then having them accept that and regurgitate to it. We have instead changed so that we are now teaching critical thinking, skepticism, the scientific method, and the Socratic method when we are teaching. And we do this at every level. We do this from kindergarten up through the end of high school. And we have done this because we realized that what we were doing was giving our students information and then having it accepted unquestionably. So we are teaching them how to be skeptics and question the information, how to use a scientific method to find out what information is reliable, and use the Socratic method, again, to not just question themselves, but to question the people who give them information. This is what the state of education, at least in the United States, is changing for. I say this as somebody who is constantly looking for better ways to teach students, to not just hand them down information, but to teach them how to take the information that they receive and question it and find out what information is reliable and what is not. Now, you might have a different system of education in your country. Here in the United States, we are working really hard to change ours. So, yes, I would actually say that education with would fall into this idea of giving someone information and then accepting it unquestionably. And I would say that that is a problem and that that needs to be fixed.
Now, of course, due to the nature of feminism, this international effort belongs to no one type, and many types can actually work together. It's sort of like a continually updated discussion on where resources should go. But let's go and just run a scenario for a little bit. If the sex-positive feminists, the trans-inclusionary feminists, and those who want refuges for all and generally are more inclusive of men simply gave up on the title feminism, and therefore the charities as well, what would happen? Well, on one hand, they may just slowly crumble, and the good they do to international education, reduction of STIs, reduction of birth rates, better family incomes, etc., would slowly disappear. On the other hand, maybe the TERFs would make a comeback. Maybe they'd once again destroy trans healthcare through these charity systems. Maybe other forms of radical feminism would utilize these charities to drive further the idea that only men are the abusers. Either way, I'm not willing to just stop being part of feminism because some others under the title have done bad things. Those things, by the way, were not part of any core aspect of feminism, as it has no dogma, no infallible scripture to fall back on. It's people making do with what they have to try and better the world. Now, as a trans individual, I don't want to even risk that. For in attempting to argue me and others like me out of feminism, you are inadvertently reducing the rationale of feminism to something which could very possibly become dangerous. This has happened before, and what you do here could simply cause a relapse.
Okay, since you like exploring arguments so much, let's explore this one. You want to keep feminists on a global level because of the good it does. It helps provide funding for shelters and other services. So if I'm understanding your argument right, we should keep A because A provides services that are important. Okay. Could we not say the same thing for Christianity? We should keep Christianity around because of all the shelters and services it provides, of the global aid it provides. I, however, think that we can in fact get rid of Christianity, and that we should. We have seen non-religious groups do charity and provide services. Why can't we say the same thing about feminist charities? Why can't we get rid of feminism and have, say, humanist or egalitarian groups take over their charity work?
I don't nearly have the patience to watch through that much of Senk to find out the context of this clip, but a few clips of high emotions and really quite bad arguments from both sides is irrelevant. I did not know that Senk wrote the Feminist Bible.
It's not whether Schenck wrote the Feminist Bible or not. It is the fact that he informs the decisions of a lot of people. Now, the last time I checked, I believe that the Young Turks Network gets over 1 billion views a day. That's a lot of people to which Schenck has influence over. Schenck can, in fact, inform the decisions of a couple of billion people, and they might, in fact, accept this unquestionably. Now, this was something that I emphasized a lot in my first video, or at least I attempted to, which was the fact that you have people who hold a lot of power saying these things. that you have people following Anita Sarkeesian unquestionably, that you have people following Jessica Valenti unquestionably. And these aren't just internet names. Anita Sarkeesian has been on the Colbert Report, therefore informing the decisions of many, many people, and many of them might actually do this unquestionably. The same thing is true for someone like Emma Watson, which I will talk about later when you mention her. And what these people are pushing, this idea of patriarchy, these ideas of rape culture, are actually having impact on the world, and not in a good way.
A single movie star answering a question in real time is hardly the best you could have gone with. But even then, all this displays is the lack of knowledge on the diversity of the feminist movement. No dogma, remember. So yes, you are hitting irrelevancy, as my title suggests, and this does not then justify the array of responses I received. So why is this in discussion?
Alright, you don't like my example. That's fine. Here's another one. This is what happens when Kaylee Coco says that she's not a feminist. Feminists lose their collective shit. To the point where she actually needed to apologize for saying that she wasn't part of their group. Now, I chose Emma Watson because of the influence she has. It's this idea that I keep coming back with. I know you say that she's an actress, but that's not the only thing that she is. She isn't just popular, she's influential. This interview happened after her UN speech. This is a person who is talking to the UN. Now, you may have some different opinions about the UN than I do. But I think that we can both agree that if you get to talk to the UN, you are a very influential person. And again, I have to come back to this idea that there are a lot of big name feminists who say things that are contrary to what your brand of feminism is. And you keep dismissing big name feminists. I don't know if you fail to realize the influence that they have, or that you refuse to realize that they inform the decisions of others. And they don't just inform the decisions of a couple of thousand people. They inform the decisions of millions. And sometimes some of these people follow these influential big name feminists unquestionably.
I appreciate the examples and I will play them for both me and others to see. But this patronising yet ironically false repetition could just stop here. Please. Find a single example where I have attacked an MRA for being an MRA and not for what they've just stated to me specifically, in person, to me. That is what I'm mentioning here as happening to me. You seem to have missed the difference, and it has weakened your position in this video to the fact that you don't really have a position. It is a straw man.
I didn't miss the difference. You didn't make the difference clear. You say that it's within the context of you talking about how you work with Mr. Makula, but you missed out a very important word in what you said within that context, which was in my experience. You have added that now, so I will stop. Because you have now come in and said, in my experience, I have found that most MRAs are dot dot dot. But in your original video, you didn't. And I know that you think you did, but you didn't. You did not make it clear. And that is where my argument comes from. So it's not that my argument is invalid, is that I argued for what you said in your video, and what you said in your video is most MRAs are, and you said the vast majority of MRAs. So I will stop attacking you now on that particular position because you have made it clear. But just because you made it clear afterwards does not invalidate the argument that I made beforehand. You have added in more information that I did not have and could not have had you not made this response video. This is what men's rights movements and men's rights activists are doing.
I really feel bad about this, as it would be so easy for me just to say, yeah, sure, and move on. But that would be a disservice to my subscribers, as this does not show what you seem to believe it shows. I mean, the clips towards the start show that men can have it really rough, they can have a shit time. A claim I never argued against, regardless of what you seem to believe about the notion of privilege. I never stated men could not have it bad, so that doesn't really refute anything. As for the later videos, they display claims, uncited claims, without mention of the actions to be taken in tackling said issues that do exist. Therefore, this selection of clips really doesn't go awfully far to impress me in the manner you hoped to do. I'm glad discussion is happening. That's a good sign on its own. But beyond that, I fail to see what you mean by this is what men's rights activists and men's rights movements are doing. I really fail to see it, and again, I am sorry.
So, this might be my problem. I might not have been clear enough. So I'll make it clear now. What MRAs and MRMs are doing in all the clips that I showed you is that they are advocating for men's rights. I feel like you should understand the importance of having a voice. You should understand that this is half the fight towards equality. You should understand the importance of giving those without a voice a space to talk about the problems that they are having. And that is what MRMs are doing. That is what all of those clips are about. It's about men and the women that are working with them trying to have a voice, trying to talk about the problems that they do have because they are not allowed to do so. And the group that is stifling their speech the most is the same group that claims to be for gender equality. It is the same group that you have willingly associated yourself with. Men, when it comes to a lot of these rights, don't have a voice. They are ridiculed. They are called sexist, racist, rape apologist, anti-equality, and they are called this when all they are trying to do is have a voice. I'm not sure if you want to dismiss this because you don't think it's enough. I see it as more than enough. Because this is where it starts. I can't imagine that if you were around during the beginning of the feminist movement, that you would have said the same thing to them. I can't imagine that if you were there, you would have said, oh, all you are doing is talking about the problems that women have. That doesn't impress me. I don't think you would have done that during the civil rights movement and said, all you are doing is talking about the problems that minorities have. That doesn't impress me. I am sorry that you are not impressed by a group of people who have no voice in a lot of areas trying to speak out. This part truly, truly infuriated me. And it infuriated me because you dismissed the men's rights activists who are going out talking about men's issues while being yelled at, while being dismissed, while actively being attacked verbally and sometimes physically. And you dismiss it as not enough. And I know you didn't say not enough, but it is the idea that I get out of your response here. That it doesn't impress you because they didn't offer solutions. We're not at that point yet. You know why we're not at that point yet? You know why we are not at that point where we have legislatures trying to push laws to help men? Do you know why we are not at that point where we can start talking about solutions? It is because we can barely talk. It is because feminists are constantly shutting us down at every opportunity. They are constantly belittling us. They are constantly telling us that we're racist, that we're sexist, that we should be thankful for feminism. We are constantly shut down by feminists. And so the fact that we can even have our voice is a triumph on its own, and you see it and you feel unimpressed. I am sorry that you are unimpressed by the achievements of men's rights, but I am on the side that does not sit there and yell at them just for having a voice. That's you. I know you're not doing it, and I know that you try your best to fight against it. But in the end, you have chosen to be part of the same group. And you can call this guilt by association all you want, but you know what? You chose to associate yourself with this group. And feminism does not have a monopoly on equality. You can be a humanist, which you obviously are. You can be an egalitarian, which would cover all the issues that would face men and women. But instead, you chose feminism. I guess at the end, I am rather disappointed that you could look at the achievements of a group and belittle it and dismiss it while being part of the problem that that group is facing. To me, it seems rather unimaginable to go and tell somebody that they need to get off their lazy asses, to go tell somebody that the way in which they are approaching trying to get their voice out is unimpressive, and do that while being part of the same group that is in fact stifling their voice. That is in fact the ones that are making it so difficult for them to get off their asses so that they can actually make real progress.